The broken signal on Planet Virex, the Planet Virex was quiet, covered in blue dust and tall black rocks, orbiting a dying star in the outer edge of the Zarek galaxy. It had no life, no water, no cities, just silence. But under its surface, something was waiting. Commander Tyrex of the Zarnan Exploratory Fleet stood on the bridge of his ship, looking at the strange signal on the screen. It was old, older than any signal he had ever seen. The code didn't match anything from the Council archives, not even the oldest relics from the Grekton species, which had died 40,000 cycles ago. "Sir, we've confirmed the location," said Velen, a young alien scientist with green eyes and smooth silver skin. "The signal is coming from 2 kilometers below the surface," Tyrex grunted. "This rock is nothing but sand and shame," he muttered. "Still, let's dig. Maybe we'll find some scrap worth selling." Velen didn't laugh. He kept staring at the pattern in the signal. The frequency was exact, repeating every 19 seconds with a pause of one, like a heartbeat. He didn't say it out loud, but the signal felt alive. The mining drones landed on the surface, and within an hour, they started cutting deep into the crust. Strange black metal appeared beneath the dust. Not natural rock, not something shaped by wind or lava. It was forged, designed, and placed, sir. Velen whispered, "This is not a cave." The excavation opened a round tunnel, smooth on all sides, lined with faded markings. The crew entered slowly, lights shining on strange symbols carved into the walls. They were sharp, straight, and powerful, like a language, but not one anyone recognized. Velen touched one of the walls. It was warm, almost pulsing. His fingers brushed a marking, and suddenly the tunnel lit up in blue light. A low hum began to echo through the walls, soft and steady, like a machine waking up after a long sleep. "Step back," Tyrex shouted, raising his plasma pistol. "That thing's alive." "No," Velen said, his voice calm. "It's remembering." They followed the light deeper until they reached a large chamber. At the center was a tall metal door, sealed tightly with ancient locking bolts. In front of it was a smooth stone pedestal with one word carved deep into it. HUMAN. Room fell silent. The word echoed in their minds, not because it was loud, but because it was impossible. "Impossible," said Tyrex, shaking his head. "Humans? They're a joke, a myth, a primitive species from Sector 9 that barely survived their own wars. But what if we're wrong?" Velen asked, "What if they weren't the last to evolve, but the first?" Tyrex scoffed and signaled the engineer to open the door. As the locks clicked and hissed, Velen noticed something strange. The symbols on the wall began to glow, and the hum turned into a voice. It wasn't words, but it wasn't noise either. It was old, layered, like thousands of voices speaking across time. Then, with a sudden hiss, the door opened. Inside was a giant hall. Walls covered with machines long dead, and statues shaped like tall beings with 2 arms and 2 legs. Unmistakably human in form. At the far end, a giant screen flickered to life, showing stars, planets, and symbols moving quickly. A map of the galaxy, but different. Older Velen walked forward, eyes wide. He touched the screen, and the map zoomed in, showing Earth. But not as a homeworld. It was marked as Colony 7 Delta. "What is this?" He breathed. A small crystal floated up from a console, spinning slowly in the air, without thinking. Velen touched it, and in an instant, his mind was filled with images. Humans building cities in space, leading great ships across galaxies, speaking languages lost to time. Their eyes were bright, their voices strong, and then silence. When he pulled his hand back, his body shook. "They weren't primitive," he said slowly. "They were gods." Tyrex stepped back. "This changes everything." Alarms on the ship rang loudly, pulling them out of the moment. A message from the surface. Unregistered transmission detected. Encrypted origin. Unknown. Velan looked back at the screen, where the map now blinked red, and then came a voice, deep, broken, human. If you found this, we are watching. Tyrex turned pale. What do we do? Velan didn't blink. We wake them. And far above them, hidden beyond the dying star, something else blinked awake. The echoes of humanity. Velan stood alone in the great hall. His fingers still tingled from the crystal's touch. The echo of the human voice, calm yet powerful, rang deep in his bones. He felt like he had just touched something sacred, something ancient, outside the chamber. The wind of Planet Virex howled above ground, but underground, everything was silent. Except the machines. More lights began to turn on, one by one. Ancient systems lit up, like stars returning to a night sky. The screen in front of Velan shifted again, now showing unfamiliar faces. Their skin was different shades, their eyes sharp, their uniforms marked with an old symbol. A circle with 3 wings, a forgotten human crest. Commander, Velan, whispered into his comlink. You need to see this. Tyrex marched into the hall with 2 guards, his weapons still drawn, but when he saw the screen, he froze. What in the stars is this? He asked. Velan turned, his voice steady. History. The screen began to play old video records, showing humans speaking to each other in a language not found in any Zarnon or Galactic database. Some were teaching, others were building, but all of them moved with purpose, with a kind of calm strength, like they had seen everything and survived it all. These files are not from today, Velan said. They're older than our civilization, maybe 10 times older. Tyrex frowned. Humans were barely flying ships a few thousand cycles ago. Velan shook his head. No, the humans we know are descendants. These, he pointed at the screen, are the originals? Another console activated behind them, emitting a slow pulse. Velan walked toward it and placed his hand on its surface. A soft hiss echoed, and a hidden doorway opened to a narrow staircase leading downward. I'm going in, Velan said. Not without backup, Tyrex replied, but Velan didn't. Wait. He moved down the staircase, step by step, deeper into the ancient ruins. At the bottom, the hallway opened into a vast underground chamber filled with thousands of floating orbs. Data cores, ancient ones. Each orb blinked as he passed. Like they recognized him, he reached the center, where a larger orb hovered. This one cracked. Damaged, but still glowing. He touched it gently, and it flared to life. Images rushed into his mind again. Human fleets in orbit, alien races bowing to them. Humans acting not as conquerors, but as teachers, keepers of peace. And then, a shadow. The memory changed, showing a great battle in deep space. Ships exploding, humans retreating, worlds burning, then silence. The Empire was gone. Velan stepped back, breathing hard. They left, he said quietly. They lost something. Or gave it up. Back in the upper hall, Tyrex's guards were nervous. Their scanners were picking up massive energy spikes under the city. Sir, I think the machines are waking up. One said. Tyrex looked at the walls, now fully lit with glowing blue lines. He could feel it too. A presence, watching, judging. Suddenly, a voice filled the chamber again. Not from the speakers, but from the air itself. You have entered. A memory vault, the voice said, smooth and neutral. Only the worthy may witness what remains. Tyrex raised his gun. Who said that? Velan climbed back up the stairs slowly, his eyes wide. I think. It's the city. The floor beneath them began to shift, changing shape. Machines rose from the ground. Not weapons, but display units, showing records, blueprints, and messages written in old human standard. Velan pointed at a symbol. This is language, he said, but we need a way to translate it. A smaller orb floated near him, scanning his body. It paused at his head, blinked green, and then released a beam of light onto the wall. Slowly, the human text turned into Galactic common. The words appeared, "If you have found this, then we are gone. We gave the galaxy peace, and in return we were forgotten. But we left echoes behind," Tyrix whispered. "This isn't a tomb," Velen nodded. "It's a warning." Suddenly, the screens changed again. A map of the galaxy lit up, dots appearing all over it. Each dot represented a vault, just like the one on Virex, hidden, waiting. "Thousands," Velen said, his voice shaking. "There are thousands of these sites," before Tyrix could respond. A signal came through their ship's channel. High priority. Encrypted, the Zarnan High Council had detected the same signal spreading across space, and other races had noticed. 2. The Forgotten Empire was no longer forgotten, and now everyone wanted to know what else the humans had left behind. The memory vault, the air was heavy with silence, yet the silence wasn't empty. It felt like the ruins were listening, watching, breathing beneath the surface of Virex. Velen stood before the main console, his fingers hovering over a glowing blue pad. Behind him, Tyrix and the 2 guards kept their distance. They didn't understand what was happening, not fully, but Velen could feel it. Something ancient had just opened its eyes. "This isn't just a ruin," Velen said, more to himself than anyone else. "It's alive." The orb that had scanned him now floated higher, blinking softly. It let out a soft tone, a sound like music and machinery fused together. Then, with a low hiss, a new section of the chamber opened behind the wall, revealing a corridor lined with what looked like mirrors, except they weren't mirrors. They were windows into memory. Velen stepped forward, drawn in by the strange energy. As he passed the first frame, the surface rippled, and a scene unfolded. Inside it, humans, thousands of them, stood on a platform orbiting a giant blue star. They wore glowing robes, carried no weapons, but controlled massive ships with their voices alone. The platform bore the seal of something Velen had never seen before: United Empire of Terra, House of Founders. Velen's breath caught. They had an empire. The second frame showed something else: peace talks between species that no longer existed. One of them resembled the fossilized creatures buried deep beneath the Nibari moons, extinct for over 50,000 cycles, and there were humans leading the talks, keeping balance like stewards of the stars, not rulers. As Velen walked further, the memories grew darker. A war, not between aliens, but between humans themselves. One faction believed in protection, in guiding other species. The other believed in control, in dominance over time and space. Their war tore apart galaxies, collapsed stars, and destroyed entire sectors. And yet, at the end, they didn't win or lose. They vanished. Velen turned to Tyrix, who had followed him silently, his face pale. "They destroyed themselves. Why leave this here then?" Tyrix asked, his voice rough. "Why leave the truth buried?" Velen stepped into the center of the memory vault. The final platform rose from the floor, and on it rested a cube, humming faintly. The moment Velen touched it, time seemed to stop. The entire chamber darkened, and a single image filled the shield. Air, a tall human, standing in silence, robes flowing, eyes glowing gold. He spoke, not in words, but in thought, and yet Velen heard it clearly. "If you have awakened this vault," the voice said, "then the stars burn with war again. We are the first ones, born of Earth, forged in the fire of survival, tested by time, and we chose to sleep. You must decide now. Will you awaken what we buried, or leave it in silence?" The vision ended. The room brightened, and Velen fell to his knees. Tyrix looked shaken too. He reached down and pulled Velen to his feet. "We need to report this." "No," Velen said slowly. "We need to understand it first." Back at the surface, strange pulses were being picked up by deep space observatories across the quadrant. Every time a vault opened, a matching signal echoed to a star system far away. Unknown to the aliens, those systems were once human strongholds. And now, they were waking up in the command center of the Zarnon ship. The technicians were panicking. One screen flashed red. Foreign technology awakening in Sector 38 source. Human. Status. Active. Another flashed. Vault 19 breached. Signal response initiated. Tyrex's comlink buzzed. Commander, we're getting calls from the Galactic Council. The Korthans are mobilizing fleets. They think we've disturbed a weapon. Tyrex's voice was tight. Maybe we did. Valen walked to the upper deck, staring at the stars above the ruins. This isn't just a memory vault, he said quietly. It's a message. What kind of message? A guard asked. Valen's eyes didn't leave the sky. That the humans were here long before us, and that they may be coming back. Suddenly, the city below them rumbled again, and this time, not just lights activated, the entire structure began to shift. Massive doors beneath the crust opened, revealing a ship, a human ship, ancient, elegant, and still functional. Velan stepped forward, heart pounding. What if this isn't just a relic? He whispered, what if it's the first to fly again? The awakening device, the ground trembled beneath Velan's feet, but this time it was not from the excavation. It was something deeper, something moving by its own will, the ancient ship. Beneath the surface of Virex had not just been revealed, it was rising. Dust and rocks slid away as metal arms extended from the city's walls, guiding the ship upward with impossible precision. There were no engines running, no flames or fuel. And yet the ship floated effortlessly, like it was being carried by memory itself. Tyrex stood frozen at the edge of the platform, eyes wide. It's flying, he said slowly. Without power, without pilots. Velen didn't answer. His focus was locked on the device that now stood exposed near the center of the chamber. A pedestal made of shifting silver plates and humming with low, steady energy. The awakening device? He whispered. What? Tyrex turned to him. That's what the vault called it in the translated records. Valen said, it's not just a control panel, it's alive in some way, like it's listening to us. The pedestal pulsed with light as if reacting to Velan's words. A long, thin beam of energy stretched out from its core, touching the rising ship gently. And then the air changed. A wave of sound filled the sky. Not a scream, not a voice, but something in between. The kind of sound that made your bones feel heavy. The kind that reminded you that you were small in the face of something ancient. The device began to speak. Designation, Arc Class 7, status, preservation mode. Primary species detected. Non-human. Secondary biological markers. Partial human code present. Velen blinked, confused. What does that mean? The device responded, your DNA contains fragments of human memory code. Ancestral link confirmed. Access permitted. Tyrex stared at Velen, stunned. You single quotes part human? I don't know, Velen whispered, but something in me matches what they left behind. The ship landed softly on a hovering dock, and a ramp extended downward, leading into its glowing core. Velen stepped forward, slowly, the wind swirling around him, the moment he placed his foot on the ramp. The lights along the edge flared bright blue. Inside the ship, silence greeted him. But it wasn't dead silence. It was filled with presence. Every wall shimmered with coded light, shifting patterns that danced as he passed. The ship was reacting, remembering, welcoming. Velen reached what looked like the command center, a circular room with a high ceiling and a glowing sphere floating in the center. He touched the sphere, and it lowered to his chest level. Scanning him again, then the voice returned. Do you wish to reawaken the defense grid? Valen's hands trembled. Defense? Against what? The sphere pulsed with a low, warning tone. The enemy. The one that broke the stars? Valen's heart raced. What enemy? Who were they? The ship projected a hologram, A dark mass spreading across the galaxy, worlds falling into silence, stars dying without cause, fleets vanishing. The ones who made us choose silence, a voice said, to preserve the galaxy. We removed ourselves, but now the signals have returned. Tyrex's voice broke through the calm. Villain, the Galactic Council just sent warships toward Virex. They think we've activated a weapon. They're scared. Velen looked up at the ceiling of the ship, which now showed the sky above Virex fleets. We're already approaching. This isn't a weapon, Velen said. It's a message, a chance. He turned to the device beside the sphere and placed both hands on it. The metal was cold, then warm, then something else. It felt like his blood was speaking back to him. Voice confirmed. Memory link complete. Awakening initiated. Outside, the vaults across the galaxy, all the dots Velen had seen on the map, began to pulse one by one. The hidden devices, long dormant, came back to life, and at the center of it all, the ancient Ark-class ship on Virex lifted into the air again, its engines now humming with true power. Not decay, Tyrex backed away, his voice unsure. Velen, what did you just do? Velen stood tall, eyes glowing with the reflection of the stars. I didn't start anything, he said. I just answered a call. Far beyond the borders of known space, deep in a void no alien ship dared enter, other signals began to blink, and, on a lost world, cold, dead, and forgotten, a human eye opened. The Galactic Council intervenes. A storm of signals flooded across the galaxy, blinking like silent warnings from a time long buried. From the edges of Korthan territory to the deep vaults near the Nereth cliffs, ancient machines were waking. It started with a pulse, then a voice, then silence. But the silence was not empty. It carried weight. In the high chamber of the Galactic Council, ambassadors from over 25 species stood frozen. Their holographic displays were filled with one repeating message. In old code none had seen in their lifetimes. Preservation failsafe activated. Human Empire relay online. Ambassador Lurik of the Korthan clans slammed his fist against the table. This is a threat. He shouted, his 4 eyes narrowing. The humans were supposed to be extinct. They were never extinct, whispered the Archivist of Thal, her long fingers dancing across glowing records. Only forgotten. But this activation, hissed the dark-skinned Solarian representative, it spreads like wildfire, from system to system, waking machines older than our oldest cities. On a massive display at the center of the chamber, the Planet Virex glowed red, pulsing with energy no one could control. Council leader Arax, the elder from the Eovari people, raised his hand. His voice was calm but cold. Send warships to Virex. If the humans left weapons buried, we must destroy them before they activate more. But what if they're not weapons? A small voice asked. It came from an unexpected place. A new ambassador, young, untested, from a minor system. Her name was Myra of Ellerin. What if we're looking at this all wrong? She said, what if they left behind protection, not destruction? Arax turned his cold eyes to her. Protection for whom? Back on Virex, Velen stood inside the awakened ship, watching as ships from several alien fleets began to approach in the sky. They came fast, dozens of them, armed and afraid. Tyrex paced nervously across the landing platform, his cum buzzing. With warnings, we have 4 different war fleets inbound. They say we're in violation of council law, that this ship is too dangerous. Velen didn't respond. His eyes were focused on a message repeating inside the Ark's interface. Contact. Point detected. Protocol pathway reopening. What does that mean? Tyrex asked. It means. Velen paused. Someone else is responding. Another vault, another ship. Suddenly, a shock wave rippled through the sky, not from weapons, but from space bending itself open. A wormhole bloomed above Virex. Unnatural and controlled. From it, a second human ship emerged. Black as the void, silent, perfect, the Council warships scrambled. Their comms exploded with orders. Panic and confusion. 2 ships. Unregistered. Power readings off the charts. They're not attacking. What are they doing? On the surface, the second human ship hovered beside Villain's. Then, from its hull, a figure descended. Slowly, gracefully, not falling, not flying. It was a human. He wore a robe of deep silver, his face unreadable, his eyes glowing faintly. Strange markings shimmered along his skin like language carved in light. Velen stepped out to meet him, speechless. The human looked at him and spoke in perfect Galactic. "Common, you've done well to wake the first," he said calmly. "But now the test begins." Tyrex stood behind Velen, stunned. "What test?" The human turned his eyes upward, toward the warships. "The test of fear." At that moment, the Ark ship projected a signal that every ship, every screen, every mind nearby could feel. Not hear, but feel. "We did not vanish," the voice said, not loud but impossible to ignore. "We chose silence, so others could speak." But now the galaxy forgets who built the stars. In the council chambers, chaos erupted. Some ambassadors called for peace, some screamed for destruction. But one thing was clear. The humans were no longer legend. They were truth, and they were not hiding anymore. Velen turned to the human beside him. "Are there more of you?" The man nodded. "Many," he said softly, "scattered across the stars, each waiting for a single moment." Tyrex frowned. "What moment?" The human looked back at the sky, where the fleets hovered, weapons shaking in their hands. "The moment the galaxy chooses," he whispered, "between fear and understanding." The first return the stars held their breath. For the first time in 10,000 galactic cycles, the impossible had happened. A true human had stepped into the light again, not from a story or myth, but from the sky itself. Above Virex, alien fleets hovered in silent confusion. Blinking lights, half-charged weapons, and frozen decisions. None of the admirals could fire. None could retreat. The presence of the human ship, sleek, black, and humming with ancient power, was paralyzing. Inside the Ark ship, Velen stood, face to face with the human emissary. His voice had been calm, but his arrival had broken the galaxy's balance. "You said the test has begun," Velen said quietly. "What test?" The human, eyes glowing faintly like cold fire, raised one hand. From his palm, a beam of soft blue light projected a map, not of Virex, but the entire galaxy. Dots lit up in places no one had visited in ages. Old human vaults waking up, one by one. Each pulse was steady, like a heartbeat, like something was breathing again after sleeping too long. "The test," he said, "is whether your people respond with fear or with wisdom." At that moment, the comms exploded with incoming messages. Council fleets were panicking, ambassadors screaming into secured channels. Some demanded immediate attacks, others begged for peace talks. Tyrex barked into his wrist unit, "Stand down all weapons. We don't know what we're dealing with." But no one was listening anymore. Ships were repositioning, not for battle, but for protection. Their systems couldn't scan the human ship clearly. It was cloaked in something unknown, unreadable. And then the second wormhole opened. A new human vessel appeared, larger, older, glowing with gold light along its hull. But this time, it didn't stop near Virex. It passed through quietly, slowly, heading toward the center of the galaxy. "Where is it going?" Velen asked. The emissary turned his gaze to the stars. "Home," he said, "to where it all began." In the Galactic Council chambers, emergency sessions were now non-stop. Species who had once ruled over sectors were demanding ancient texts, old data, forgotten signals. The archivist of Thal uncovered a record lost for ages, a scroll from the founding of the first galactic treaty. It held a name none had read in eons. signed in absence by humanity, guardians of the first flame. They were here, she whispered, even before we named the stars. Back on Virex, the emissary stepped forward, placing his hand on the command orb inside the Ark ship. The hull around them changed, showing a view of Earth, but not as Velen knew it. Not green and blue, not broken and scarred, but shining, covered in lights, covered in towers made of glass and stone, orbiting. Stations stretched around the planet like rings, and ships moved silently between them. "This is Earth?" Velen asked, stunned. "It was," the human replied. "But what you see is a memory." The image shifted again, showing Earth now, cracked, abandoned, with satellites dead and cities overgrown. "What happened?" Tyrex asked. "We left." The human said simply, "We gave the galaxy a gift, peace, but when that peace was broken, we vanished, to see what would grow in our absence." "And now you're coming back?" Velen asked. The human paused, then nodded. "Not to rule, not to fight, but to see if you're ready to remember what we tried to build." Suddenly, a warning light flashed inside the ship. Enemy missiles, not from the Council, but from a rogue faction the Zarkith Combine had fired from orbit, terrified of losing power. The missiles screened toward the surface. Velen flinched, but the emissary simply raised his hand. The Ark ship responded instantly, a soft pulse of energy expanding. Like a bubble, the missiles hit the shield and vanished, not exploded, not destroyed, but absorbed, turned into dust. Tyrex stared in disbelief. "You're not just advanced," he whispered. "You're something else." The human turned to him slowly. "We evolved through pain, not privilege, through failure, not fortune. That is what shaped us." Velen stepped beside him. "And now?" The emissary looked at the stars again. "Now we return, not to lead, but to warn." A pause. Then he said something that made Velen freeze. "Enemy we once fought is stirring again, and this time we cannot face it alone." The Empire reborn across the stars. The pulse was no longer a whisper. It had become a voice, steady, rising, unforgettable. From the far corners of the galaxy, forgotten human vaults lit up one by one. Some were buried beneath oceans, others hidden inside moons, some disguised as mountain ranges on barren worlds, all of them now awake. Each activation came with a message, a memory and a choice, and across every species, every empire, every council chamber, leaders were facing the same truth. Humanity was never gone. It had simply stepped aside. On Virex, Velen stood at the edge of the Ark ship's platform, staring at the newest arrival, a third human vessel, vast and cathedral-like, with living walls and gold-lined towers stretching from its hull. But this time, there were hundreds of humans on board. They stepped out in silence, robes flowing, not a weapon in sight. Yet the weight they carried was stronger than any army. It was the weight of history. Tyrex watched in disbelief. "They're not here to fight," he said slowly. "They're here to rebuild." The emissary nodded. "This is not a conquest." He said, "It's a return." Velen looked at him, voice trembling. "Why now?" The emissary didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked toward a new console inside the Ark and placed his hand upon it. The sky above changed, not physically, but through a projection so real it felt alive. It showed a dark part of space, empty at first, then flickering with strange movement. A shadow, not a fleet, not a species, but something deeper. A hunger moving across stars, leaving only silence behind. "The enemy we once sealed away is stirring," the emissary said. "Back then, we gave everything to stop them, even our presence." "What are they?" Velen asked. "Not alive in the way you understand," the emissary replied. "They consume light, memory, time. They erase meaning itself." Tyrex stepped forward, anger in his voice. "And you left the galaxy defenseless?" "No." The human said calmly, "We left behind seeds?" He looked at Velen. "And you were one of them." Velen blinked, confused. "Me?" "You carry human code," the emissary said. "Not by accident, but by design. The Vault accepted you because you are part of us, a hybrid born from the peace we once spread." Velen's legs felt weak. "Why me?" "Because you asked the right question," the emissary answered. "You didn't try to destroy. You tried to understand." Across the galaxy, a message played through every vault at the same time, translated into every language ever known. The human empire is not rising to rule. It is rising to remember. If you stand with us, we will stand with you. The council was divided. Some feared the return, but many now understood without the humans. The galaxy had splintered into greed, fear, and broken treaties. Now, there was a chance for something better. Velen stood on the arc bridge as the emissary placed a final crystal into the console. A beacon formed above the ship, stretching light across the stars, calling not just to humans, but to every species that still believed in unity. From distant systems, small ships answered the call. Some were alien, others were old human craft, reawakened by whispers. A new alliance was forming. Not by force, but by choice. The emissary turned to Velen. "You will be the first." "The first what?" Velen asked. "The first ambassador of the reborn empire." The emissary said, "You carry both our legacy and your people's future. That balance is what we once lost. You may help us find it again." Velen stepped forward slowly, the weight of galaxies pressing on his shoulders. And yet, for the first time, he didn't feel afraid. He looked at the glowing stars beyond Virex and whispered, "Then let's begin again." And across the stars, as old machines stirred and ancient ships returned to orbit, a quiet truth filled the galaxy. Humanity had never truly left. They had simply waited for the right time to return, and now they weren't coming back as rulers, or gods, or myths. They were coming back as guardians, and this time they weren't coming alone.